It's another OSU pregame. The Oklahoman, you're hanging out with the Oklahoman's OSU coverage team. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor, from my living room where I'm watching a lot of college football today. Joining us is our OSU beat writer, Kyle Fredrickson. He's in the press box up in Stillwater, where OSU is counting down to its 2:30 kickoff against Missouri State. And also on her way to Stillwater, columnist Jenni Carlson. Jenni, let's start with you. How's the traffic so far, and are you in Stillwater yet?
I am in Stillwater. For any officers of the law out there, I promise I'm not driving. Yeah, right. But I am in Stillwater. Traffic's been good. I think that there's maybe a few people that may be laying low, or they've already come up for the tailgate and all the activities that go on around the game, but hasn't been bad. I'm curious to see what this weather does for people too. Obviously the cool temperatures are great, but it is raining, and it's probably going to be a wet one this afternoon.
Okay, Kyle, what's going on out on the field right now? Is there any activity, anybody down there getting ready?
We saw a few players come for the prayer circle a little while ago, and it looks like guys are just starting to warm up right now. But like Jenni said, it's real wet out there. I think they're still kind of trying to assess the conditions. But as far as the weather's concerned, I actually just got the phone with the National Weather Service. They said that Stillwater in the past 24 hours has gotten 2.8 inches of rain. So, I mean, that's quite a bit. But they did say they expected it to break up in the next hour or two, which is right on schedule for the start of the game. So, hopefully things will break up by then, and we'll get a little bit of sunshine.
Of course, Oklahoma State's got that field turf surface, or the artificial surface, so that while wet field could be slick, it won't be muddy. Kyle, curious, what's the OSU uniform combination today?
We haven't seen it yet. It looks like, now that I'm looking down, we've got the State in white pants. But as far as I know, that's really the only update so far. Once these guys kind of get up for warm-ups, we'll have a better idea.
Okay, let's talk about the storylines for today. Of course, you wrote about the special teams not being very special in lots of areas against Florida State. Is a game like this a good time to sort of take a step back and tighten things up?
Yeah, I think so. And even when Mike Gundy was asked about this game, the big thing that he said was it was weak for OSU to focus on themselves. Obviously, they have to put in a game plan in all three phases, but you don't have to focus on the opponent as much when you're facing an FCS Missouri State. And so obviously special teams is going to be a point of emphasis. Mike Gundy had said that the stage is what really got some of his young guys against Florida State. That won't be the case today, but it'll still be interesting to see if those snaps are a little more crisp and if there is any kind of those mental errors that we saw against Florida State.
Jenni, if I set the over-under on number of OSU quarterbacks who take snaps today at 2, are you taking the over or the under?
Well, I think we're going to see at least 2, but I think we're going to see 3, but I'm not sure who the third one is. We had this conversation on Football Friday Hangout, and, the whole question of Mason Rudolph. Are they thinking they're going to use him this year, or would this just essentially be burning his red shirt for no good reason? So I think that's a really interesting question. It's really going to reveal something, I think, about Mason Rudolph's standing for this season. Are they thinking that he might be a guy that plays some, or is this just a guy that is going to be sitting and waiting? I think that's a big question today. But I would say over, although I'm not sure who number 3 will be.
How about it, Kyle? How many quarterbacks are we going to see tonight?
I'm on par with Jenni. I really don't think that we'll see Mason Rudolph today. I could be wrong, but when you have 2 guys in Walsh and Garmin who figure to be the top 2 on the depth chart, I don't see any need to play him. But Gundy said he wants to play a quarterback situationally. Whether Rudolph fits into that mix is yet to be seen, or whether that's just some gamesmanship by Mike Gundy, keeping everyone in the dark about his quarterback situation. It could be another possibility. But I would guess 2, and I think that we'll get a heavy dose of Dax Garmin for sure.
Kyle, let's go to the sort of the long tail of wide receivers that the Cowboys have. We start calling off names. We get to people who have great potential, and we really haven't seen any of it so far. I guess today is a day where you could see 6, 8, 10 receivers catch the ball. Who are you looking for that maybe who are you interested in seeing that maybe you haven't so far?
You know, I was just kind of looking down at the depth chart that they handed out here this morning. You know, the guys that I'm kind of interested in seeing are the guys on the edge. You know, Seals and Aitman. Those are kind of the Cowboys' two deeper threats, guys who can really stretch the field. And like you said, we didn't see much of that against Florida State. But now that you're playing against an FCS secondary, Walsh is going to have plenty of time to sit his feet and rifle balls downfield. It's going to be interesting to see how those guys perform, because you're right, we've heard so much about this group and their potential, but we haven't seen it yet just because of what the game plan ended up being against Florida State. And, you know, if Dax Garman gets a few snaps and shows off his arm, I mean, that could be another storyline to follow if he's the guy who can really get these deep threats to the ball.
Danny, you wrote about one of these very guys, not a receiver, but somebody who for whom this game really matters. I think as journalists and writers covering these games, sometimes we're a little bit, I don't know, we're a little bit cynical about games we already know the outcome. But for guys like the guy you wrote about today, this is a big game. Talk about him and maybe what else we can see from some of these seldom used players.
Yeah, I wrote about Jordan Stearns today, and he's a guy that played some last year on special teams and played very sparingly on defense in blowouts most of all. And thank you. And he was a guy that got started last week. Obviously a huge deal, but this will be his first game really playing meaningful defensive snaps at Boone Pickens Stadium. So a guy that has heard his name called on the PA, who's run out of the tunnel in his uniform, but really had to wait a while to get his chance to be out there doing what he came to OSU to do. Special teams probably not being at the top of his list. Playing safety was what he came to do. So he gets a chance to, as do several other guys. You're going to see a good number of guys starting for the same Jordan Stearns. They're playing quite a bit who did not do that before. So I think that, yeah, it is a game that we know the outcome. We know OSU is going to get the win. But I think for some guys there is a significance that maybe it can be lost on people, including us. I think sometimes we can overlook that. And I thought Jordan Stearns was a candidate for a guy that it's going to be special for. He had 8 tackles, led the team against Florida State. You know he was hyped up for that game. I have a feeling he'll be similarly hyped for this one.
Kyle, before I let you guys get out of here and get back to work, how about the upset special brewing up in Ames? Cyclones, who lost their left tackle and have had injuries at wide receiver. One of those guys quit this week. They lost last week. Looked like maybe Paul Rhodes was losing his team. Barry had him as the coach on the hot seat. And they're up a couple scores on Kansas State at halftime. What do you make of that?
Yeah, pretty shocking, but at the same time, I think, the identity of this Iowa State football team over the past few years is that, they're going to get a win or two at home with that crowd when people don't expect it. Obviously OSU understands how that works with the crushing loss they had there a few years ago that kind of ended their BCS national title dream. So, but credit to Paul Rhodes. It looks like those guys came out to play despite all the adversity that you mentioned. But they've got a great fan base out there, and going into that stadium's always tough. So, you figure that K-State should pull away here in the second half, but definitely a good start by the Cyclones.
Jenny, going back to that, Jenny, you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, just real quick about Iowa State, Kansas State. Is this something that hurts the Big 12? I've seen some mentions on Twitter, like, hey, all you who had Kansas State upset in Auburn, are you backtracking on those? Is this weaken or strengthen the Big 12? Kyle, looks like we may have lost Jenny. How about you on that question? Is this a good thing or a bad thing for the Big 12?
You know, I don't know. In my opinion, I just think it's too early in the season to be making those kind of definitive statements. I mean, obviously for North Dakota State to get the victory against Iowa State in the opener doesn't look good on the Big 12, but that's a team who's done it before. In my personal opinion, it's just too early to tell, but it'll be interesting to see how these storylines play out, and if Iowa State can actually bounce back from that first win or that first loss.
Okay. Hey, Kyle, that's all for this edition of the Oklahoman's Missouri State pregame show. Look forward to the coverage you're going to be providing on News OK during the game, and then afterwards in the Oklahoman. You guys enjoy the game.
Absolutely.